Samsung Galaxy S3. Designed for humans.
A good literature review and how to put the different sentences together to write something good. Today I'll look at two things: how to do referencing and then how to write a research proposal. I remember last week you asked about that, so I will try and cover that today. Okay. Now, one thing I just want to recap. One thing I pointed out is the fact that sometimes students or writers often fall into the trap of a bad literature review. What they do is they just put a number of sentences together without any analysis. So if you read this particular write-up, it just says that sexual harassment has many consequences. Adam, Kotek, and Paget found that some women students said they avoided taking a class or working with certain professors because of a risk of harassment. They also found that men and women students reacted differently. Benson and Thompson's study in social problems lists many problems created by sexual harassment. In their excellent book, The Professor, Dish and Weiner give a long list of difficulties victims have suffered. Nothing being analyzed. They are just put one sentence after the other. So this is more about putting references together, not rather analyzing. If you want to see how somebody writes a good literature review, there's evidence that there's an argument. There is also evidence from the literature, and then there's illustration. So what you end up realizing is that victims of sexual harassment suffer a range of consequences, from lowered self-esteem and loss of self-confidence to withdrawal from social interaction, change career goals, and depression. Now, for example, then it shows you the example. If you look into the first one, we don't even know what it means by consequences. None of the consequences are often stated here. But in this other one, you can see that the person has presented an argument, evidence in terms of the references are here, and then an illustration. So this style of writing is very, very important, that you have argument, evidence, illustration. Argument, evidence, illustration. And as we go through the how to write a research proposal, I'll explain further. You see more examples of that. The first thing I want to point out is how do you present the evidence? In presenting evidence, we usually call that literature reference. That is how you give a reference to the work that you have quoted or something that you have stated out. Or sometimes people don't know where you took that particular work from. So what you see here is that the act of providing evidence for arguments and perspectives presented in the literature writer is what we call literature reference. Now there are two types of references. Now, references provided within the body of the text and the references at the end. I think you have seen it with some publications before. There are references which are in the text and the references are down or below. For example, these are references within the text, so you see them highlighted. And then these are references . These are references at the end of the text, at the end of the write-up. So you see that comes as a list, alphabetical order. And the references within the text, one thing that you end up realizing that they are some are at the end of the sentence, which are not in the logic of the sentence. So you can read a sentence without even mentioning them. This is the same thing. It's within the sentence, but it's not in the logic of the sentence. Then there are others that are with the logic of the sentence. So when the reference comes, there is a verb that follows it. Now both approaches are welcome. It's all about the writing style of the person. So you end up realizing here that in the late 1990s, researchers argued that inflation and low wages contributed to unemployment. She is the reference there. Uche 2000. So this is the surname and this is the year. And then there's a semicolon here. And then here is Mensah et al. Et al means that there are 3 or more authors. So when there are 2 authors, you can write. But when there are 3 or more authors, you just write et al. And then you make it in italics. Remember that there's a full stop at the end of the et al. Now you need to be consistent. If you use a full stop, it has to be there throughout. If you don't use a full stop, don't repeat it anywhere. So that it's consistent throughout the work that you are doing. Now, there are sometimes that the reference is part of the sentence, like Salia, in a recent study on unemployment in Egypt, Salia 2011 found political instability. So it is part of the sentence. If I drop this out, it will read as if that the sentence has no meaning. In a recent study on unemployment in Egypt found political, there's something that is missing in there. So the referencing list comes at the end of the referencing the whole writer. Now let's see how we do the reference. There are different types of referencing styles. Now every style has its own conventions that you have to follow. There's what we call the Harvard style, and there's what we call the APA style. If you want to learn referencing, I'll give you a number of links for you to go to find what the Harvard style and the APA style. But in the textbook that you have, the Fisher's book, I think page 214 to page 224, at the end of the book, it's called style. It talks about these referencing that you should be able to do. If you can't find it, go to the index, and then the index it will tell you that go and see style. So you go to S and the index style, and then it will tell you the page number. Good. Or you can look into the table of contents. But let's see. There's Harvard style, there's APA style. Now, in the business school, we use these two predominantly. Depending on the preferences of your supervisor, you may want APA or Harvard. But Harvard is more of the convention that all the students go for, unless the supervisor wants to take and go for APA style. And I'll show you what I mean by Harvard. But if you go to linguistics, you see there's one called MLA. If you go to engineering, there's another one that they use. There are quite a number of different types. Now, one of the sessions, I'll let Joseph come and teach you how to use Word to do your reference. So that at the end of the day, when you finish all your write-up, Word will just generate the whole list for you. Otherwise, you do so much work for you to generate the list when you finish your write-up. Okay. Now let's go. This is the link to get the Harvard style, and this is a link to get the APA style. And I'll explain the Harvard style. Now, since all of you know where to get the book, let me continue. Now, the Harvard referencing style has two key features: the surname and then the year of publication. Surname and the year of publication. So you see them quite often. Smith 2005 or Smith 2005 this way. Now, consistency again. If you don't want to use a comma, don't use it, and keep it the same way throughout. Whichever style, whatever you try to do, or any modifications that you do to it, it has to be the same thing throughout. So it's allowed to use a comma or not a comma. It's allowed to use a full stop and the XL and not the no full stop. But whatever you do, just be consistent. You can't mix the styles and then change the way you are doing it. It will confuse the person who's reading it. Yeah.
And using the data, you said when there are
three or more,
which one becomes the predominant order?
The lead order. Whenever you are reading any work, let me just give you an example. A work written by Abel, Bonfer, and Hicks, it will be Abel et al. When you look into the, if I should say, the publication, you can see that the first person, the author's name starts first. The first author who comes in the publication is what you write. Sometimes you open the journal, they arrange them chronologically, or they just put them 1, 2, 3. It's not going to be arranged by alphabetical order. They'll just write their name this way. And the first person is always the author of the lead author. I understand what you're saying, because I realize that sometimes students just pick in the names and they write it out. And it becomes confusing because it seems the document doesn't exist. But the first author is the one that you pick all the time. And every good journal will show you who the first author is. It will just show you as the first person you see. The only challenge that you're going to have is that if you are reading the Chinese, the papers published by Chinese authors, sometimes you don't even know which of them is the same name. Lin Qing, Lin Heng, and they can write it continuously, and you ask yourself now which of them is the same. Or some journals write the person's full name, Richard Watson. Others will write Watson Richard. So if you don't take care, if you read mine, there are some conventional English names that if you hear or read it, you know it's a surname. But there are some other names, if you're not from that country, you don't know which of them is a surname and then the first name. For example, Nigerians will write, I've seen, Ugandans rather. They like writing, and sometimes Nigerians too, they like writing their surname first and they write the other name second. So, but if you don't take care, you think because it's a journal, the second one is the surname, and you change it the other way around. So if you don't know the names, it becomes confusing. So sometimes look, when you are downloading it, look at how the journal itself writes online or arranges the names. Then you can use it to get an idea of what to write. If you are using Emerald always writes the person, not the journal, but on Emerald website, they like writing the person's first name before the surname. Let me just do an illustration here. It's a good question.
You are getting a point for that.
Do you get what?
A point. The field story point.
Oh, a point. Okay, later we'll think about it. How many marks do you want? You don't want to write exams? Okay, let's see. And Patel, and then or Wilson and Patel this way. Sometimes some people use the ampersand, others also use the end. I'll explain why it's preferable to use this in Harvard style. Although this other one is also welcome. Then you see that there's United Nations and then there is Mensa et al. Now let's try to understand how to use it. If the reference name naturally forms part of the sentence, then we include it exactly as if there's no reference is being given. So Carson 1970 argued that it forms part of the logic of the sentence. So I will use it as part of the sentence. Hence, there's parenthesis goes onto the year, not on the name. You can't put the parenthesis on the name. You can't read that a sentence. So the parenthesis on the brackets go onto the year of publication, not onto the whole name. So you see that there's a difference. A system developed by Brown and Smith, the Declaration of Human Rights published by the United Nations. AI has been effective as Hamza claims. On the other hand, Jones et al. Have reported. Carson, 1970-23, argued that. Now what you tend to realize here, Carson, 1970-23, argued that the person is trying to include the page number. So you can write either comma P23 or PP 23-2024, showing that there's a range of pages, or PGS, the same thing showing that 23 to 24, depends on the person. Now we usually put in the page number if you are quoting verbatim from somebody's work, so they can give you the reference. But if you are taking it from online, sometimes you cannot be able to know which page number it is. For example, if it's a web page, you can't tell it's a page number. So that you are forgiven in that sense. There's no need for you to put in the page number. Yes? You had a question? Then sometimes the person could have written a number of different papers, either in the same year or across a number of years. For this one, Jones 1990, Jones 1980, Jones 1983, Jones 1987 has repeatedly argued that. The reason why he's putting repeatedly means that the argument is consistent within all these papers. So if he's putting those papers, then there should be an argument on why he's trying to put all those papers. So when you say researchers have argued that, we need to see at least one or two papers in your references. The same way it happens here. Now there are times that a person could have published one author, like Dunfer has published Dunfer 1990, first paper. All boys are good. Dunfer 1990, second paper. Girls Gone Bad. Now, all those two papers were published in 1990. When he's using it in his work, which of them he will use first?
The one which has importance on the topic.
Good. The one that has importance on the topic. So that first one which he uses, if he uses Girls Gone Bad first, he's going to write Drufford 1990A. Even though in alphabetical order, the first paper comes before that other one. So you write A, like 1983A or 1990A. Now when he puts in the A, the second thing that he's going to do is that if he goes back and picks a document on or a section of the next one, All Boys Are Good, he will still also write Jones 1990B. When it comes to the list of references, once one is A and one is B, the A will come before the B. So it will look like Jones, R, 1990A. Girls Gone Bad. Jones, R, 1990B. All Boys Are Good. Because A comes before B. So I want you to appreciate that how the referencing system works. Now let's continue. There are certain times that you need to write how you need to express an argument from a particular author, and you want to write something like this. Carson's 1970 paper argues that. Now, it's not necessarily wrong in terms of English, but universally it's not acceptable because we get confused whether it's Carson that you are referring to or the paper. So, what is appropriate is writing a paper by Carson. It sounds better, so that we know what you are. So if it's a book by Carson, you can understand. We can be able to know there's a big difference between this and that. Now, think about this other one too. An earlier paper Carson. What is wrong? Either he has left out a comma. No, not a comma. There should be there's a missing word here that will join the two. By. Or you could have moved the brackets and put it before the C, so that it becomes an earlier paper states that. But then we know that what he means by an earlier paper. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Good. In the same way, it has been claimed that economic plan has been effective. Hamza 1983, comma. Now, Hamza is at the end of the sentence. We don't know what is Hamza part of the effective drug. No. So what happens here is Hamza should rather be, the bracket should go before the word, the name Hamza. Now please, let me just also point out here. I'm not going a little bit back. What you tend to realize is that the full stop comes after the brackets, not before the brackets. A lot of students do that mistake, that they write a full sentence, and because they think they're constructing a sentence, it should have a full stop. Then they put a full stop there and write a reference after that. Now what ends up happening here is the fact that we will ask, is this reference for the next sentence or is for the previous sentence? Because we have put a full stop here after T. And now we are confused. We don't know whether the reference that you are giving us is for the next sentence or is for the previous sentence. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So what ended up happening here is, please put the reference in at the end of the, after the brackets, not before the brackets. Let's continue. Now, if the reference name does not form a natural part of the sentence, include both the name and the year in the parentheses. So an earlier paper like that, the ARGA program, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, on the other hand, it has been reported Jones et al. 1983. Now, I could have written that it has been reported, on the other hand, Jones et al. Reported that. But now that I want to put it here, I have to put this one in the brackets, on the parentheses. So these are the styles that you end up learning from. This is how you reference within the text. Now let me explain why we sometimes need to use the ampersand and not the end. Read this and see. Brown and Smith 1986, and then Carson 1970. If I put the end here, it will look as if Brown is a different paper, Smith is a different paper, and then Carson is a different paper. But maybe I made a mistake and dropped the year for Brown. That's what sometimes the omission that or the confusion that comes up. But it's still welcome. You can use end. a good writer will be able to understand what you mean. But just in case you just want to choose the ampersand, make it consistent that anytime there is an end, you write it this way. However, how will you reference at the end of the sentence, at the end of the write-up, after you have written the long essay? How will you reference? Now, I'm going to teach you how to reference a book, and then a journal, and then something from the internet. If you are referencing a book, it is surname and initials, the year of publication, the title in italics, the edition, the publisher, and place of publication. So it looks like that. Very straightforward. So pattern, comma, MQ, 1990, qualitative evaluation and research methods, itemized. And then stage publication, and then the place of publication. The place of publication is usually the city. But here you have the city and the state. So you have the state of California. So it's usually the city is what you put in there. Now, one other point I want you to realize that sometimes some people put full stop after the 1990, and they'll put full stop here and put full stop after everything they write. Don't be surprised when they do that. It's also consistent throughout. Then journal article. A journal article will be referenced this way: the surname, the year of publication, the article title in quotes, the journal title in italics, like that. Journal of Personality and Psychology. And then the volume number and then the issue number. Now, one thing I'll emphasize here is the fact that sometimes people write vol, others also write volume in full. So whatever style you choose, you have to write it and make it consistent. You also realize that some people don't write anything there. They write 51 and then 2 in brackets. When you see that, that is APA style. Harvard Styles always writes this in full, either vol or volume, and then issue. They don't put it in parentheses. Then the pages come. Now, what if you are reading a book chapter, and it's from a section of the book? You're reading a book and there's a section of the book. Now, you also use the same style. First of all, you have to remember that the chapter within the book would have been written by somebody else. So it's going to be if, let's say, if somebody wrote it and the person is called Andor, it's going to be Andor, comma C. The same, because the book was published the same year, it's likely that they will have the same, the chapter 2 was published the same year. So it's going to be Andor C, Andor, comma C, and then the year will be in the brackets. That will be 1990 if it's that. Then the chapter 1, Introduction to Economics. Then you write in a book. You see, it has to be, the book has to continue. Because you are picking a chapter written by somebody else. So it's going to be the chapter under C, 1990, chapter 1, Introduction to Economics. Then you continue with this one. But because the author of the book is editing the book, you see, when somebody writes a book and people are contributing chapters from different authors or from different perspectives, the book, the one who has a name on the book is usually the editor. So we call them the editor. Because you want to show that he's the editor, you write ED at the end of the name, before the title of the book comes, at the end of the brackets, ED. Now if there are 2 editors, it will be EDS. Just to show that this is an edited book, it wasn't written by, there are other authors who came together to put it together. This guy just did the editing. What about the internet? That's the most difficult one. First of all, you have to know the name of the website, the year of the publication, article title, then where you found, where the article is, the URL or the link, and then the date you access it. Now this is the general rule. Now let's come to specifics. When you go to the website, and it's usually if you go to a news website, first of all, instead of writing the name of the company, like My Job Online, ask yourself, the article you are reading, does it have an author? If the article has an author, because some journalists write their name on their articles, like BBC, or you go to Joy FM, Efia Gomez. Now, if you see Efia Gomez there, you come and do Gomez, comma A, then the year. Now, the year too can confuse you. If there's a year on the date, that this article was uploaded or was posted or published on 1st January 2012. You write 2012 as your year. Then you write the article title that Efia Gomez has written, and then write the link to that article at copy it. Then the date you access it. However, there are some websites like you go to a university website, University of Reading, Department of Physics, Atomic Collusion. What you are reading is Atomic Collusion. And there's no author. What will you do? There are two things you can do. First of all, you could write University of Reading and put it in brackets, because that's the name of the website. Then you write Atomic Collusion, comma. The next one goes to Department of Physics, comma, and then the mother of the one who the whole website is named after, being the institution, the name of the institution, University of Reading. Before you continue and do the rest of that. Because the most important thing is that can we find the document? Can we find it? Yes.
Yeah, so there are some publications that the authors didn't use their real names.
How do you
use their papers? Oh, of course they use the other names.
Yes, of course. How do you know?
Oh.
How do you know that the one I even publish I use my real name? So take the
no,
name of the person.
you know the person's name, but because of one reason or the other, they decide to use a name for that column.
So for that column. So then daily graphic.
Yes.
Oh yes, okay. Then use the same name that he's using for that column. Because that's what you want to find.
No, because at a point you realize that.
What are you?
He's from Nigeria. We don't have some in Nigeria. We don't have some.
You want to put it off or on? The place is warm here. Okay. Let's continue. Let's continue. Now, what I'm trying to emphasize here is if there's a name of the author on the page, use that name that you saw. Even if the person is using a pseudonym, as you are pointing out, I think you should still use it. For example, if Anas has written something and use a different name, you still use the name that the person has written. Don't be worried about it. That's a name that if everybody is looking for you, used to find it. But the confusion comes in when you are reading an article written by a certain person. Let's say a different Andor writes a paper, and you like the paper very much, and the Andor has made a statement in the paper, and you want to take that argument and also use it. But Andor also took it from the website. You copy the link he gave, and maybe he took it from somewhere during 2005. So you go and paste it in the internet and it doesn't exist anymore. Or the website is even gone off, or the page does not exist. What do you do? The first thing that you should think about is the fact that you are not the one who is quoting this. Andor is the one who read it. So you have not read it. So what you should do is to write the reference as it is you see in Andor's work, and write in Andor. So first of all, you have to take the reference and make it have, then put in whatever it has to be. Now, but within the body of the work, when you are writing the work itself, if you pick the quote, remember Andor has quoted the person, so you didn't quote, so you are picking the quote that Andor took. What you end up saying is, you take the quote as you see it in Andor's work and write that maybe Andor quoted somebody like Hinson. So it's going to be Hinson 2009 as cited in Andor 2012. I hope you understand. So that you are not held responsible if there's anything that is not true or is wrong about that particular reference. Because you are just using as you saw it in Andor's work. However, if there's a possibility that you can go and find a document, go and find it and read it yourself. It's always encouraged. Because you may even find out some new things that Andor may have not looked into and may be relevant for your work. Now when you finish all this, you need to present the list. So you're going to say that what in 2011. Now you see, there's a little bit of a difference here. The person added the date in this particular one. The date of the article. You see, this is the date it was published. Sometimes you don't write the date in the body of the work, but when you are doing the list of references, you can add the date if it's a newspaper article, because the newspaper article are serialized. So what is published today will be different from what is published tomorrow. Especially because on the internet you will not be able to know whether it is issue number this or volume number that. So the date in which the article was published, you can put it there. But don't write it in the body of the work. The body of the work, you can just write 2011. But if you are writing it whilst in the work itself, at the end of the list, or in the referencing list, you can add the date. It's also welcome. Then, you see that here is written available at or available. If you are using APA, you don't write available, you write retrieved form. So you see that sometimes you come across retrieved form. All this, that is APA style. So this gives you how to do the reference. But download them and then read more. The rules are quite a lot. How to reference audio, video. If you are watching a video, you want to reference it. All these things are there. But please, don't be quoting from videos and videos. The most important thing is that can we find the job? Can you find it when we are looking for it? So let's look into any questions. I'm going to show you. Yes.
If you forget to acknowledge someone,
how can you forget?
What happens?
What happens?
Yeah.
You are plagiarized. You can be failed. What do you mean by
what? Maybe omission.
Omission. In what sense? At what stage of the work? Maybe if your supervisor sees it, you point it out. But if you use a considerable number of work from somebody's amount of content for somebody's work, you need to give credit, because otherwise you are saying that it is your own work. That's what you are telling us. You remember the declaration you signed? When you are submitting your long list, there's a declaration you sign, and there's some other statements that you sign, that this work is done by you and everything. Now before you sign that, go back and make sure that you are going through the work.
No, but sir, if you look at the number of reference you have to do, and you...
That is why whenever you are reading, you should start doing the reference. Right? And that's why you do the summaries, so that you always remember where you took something from. Yes, I'm coming. You always remember where you took something from.
Yeah, I was just putting this across because, you know, this is not political though. The communication minister, yeah, he did something like that. At the end of the day, they failed him.
No, but that one, he used a considerable amount of somebody's work and claimed that is his work. After the omission, it is political to say that it's omission. Let me tell you an example. I was in the US University of teaching. They impeached the vice chancellor. Okay, they tried many ways to impeach, they didn't get one until they found out that his long essay for his PhD, he contracted somebody to write a part for him. A considerable amount of the parts, and he didn't do the work. So they took the PhD, they withdrew the PhD for him. So, most important thing is that make sure they are going through the work. But whenever you are facing, are you trying to tell me you didn't read the work and know which is in your report? This is not yours, and this is from somewhere. You will know. Every thief knows what he stole. When you read through the work, you know what you stole, what is yours. Last week when I was teaching you, I told you that before you start, write everything that is in your head and put it down. And then start picking up and then adding on and building it. But what I would emphasize, if you do the summaries, you can be able to remember what to put there. Then, I think there's a difference between you have forgotten where the reference is from, and then you have forgotten, or you don't know that you have to reference. You see, do you know that this sentence is not yours, but you have forgotten where you took it from? The easy thing is that take it and put it in Google. Google will find it for you. Because that is where we are all going to look for it. But For you to say that you don't remember that this sentence is not your sentence is something that I don't understand. It's like sitting somebody's car and saying they don't know that this one is not your car.
You say we want to see his first degree.
Yes, there was a hand there. Sorry.
When you are reviewing a thesis, how can you check all the references? I mean, like you, for example, like choose 5 randomly. And out of that 5,
As a supervisor, how do you check? Okay, the supervisors don't check very well, but when we are marking, we get our assistants, like our assistant too.
no,
First of all,
no, this is actually not the question. The
Okay.
question is, he chooses, I don't know, 5 references, and out of that 5, 2 is online, but you have to pay for it. I mean, how can you check that if I use the source correctly, if the source is like not accessible,
okay,
or the
no,
book is not available, or
no, there are two. I think let me explain what you are saying if I get it right. First of all, there's a question about whether the source exists.
no, the source exists.
But
Like I bought, for example, something online, like
And then use it.
as of in these journals.
Good.
For some of them you have to subscribe.
Good, and
So
you are
have
wondering
to
whether
pay.
the supervisor has access to it.
So, like, let's assume the supervisor doesn't have access.
Good.
because
Let me give you a scenario. First of all, Google does not need you to buy it to tell you that the content exists. And we have got plagiarism checkers like Turnitin. There are other softwares that you can use to check for plagiarism. When we load your document into it, it can check and tell us which sentences are exactly or almost matching. It tells the degree of match in terms of percentage. Good. Now, let me show you something that is not going to be. Oh, there are some of them are free. Type free plagiarism checker online. There are some of them which are not free, which are quite rigorous in what they do. So it will check all electronic content that ever exists on the internet or wherever you can find them. As far as they have been published and have been available. They even check books that are not online and tell you. And what it does is that it even match it and show you, pull the document and show you that on this website, on this page, this is there. But remember, you're not the only student in the world. So there's something that you can be doing that somebody else has also picked. But this is what it does. There is checking the percentage and checking whether you are plagiarizing. I can find out that there are sentences that are almost the same, but it can come from your, like, Kofi is going to school. Everybody can write that. It doesn't mean you're plagiarized. But when we see how they are matching and placed by each other, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So I read it and I realize that the first line, which has 10 words, 6 of the words are together, you have picked it up. The second line from the same place, on your second line, you have picked that same thing. So it means that you are just changing is and off and antonyms. But that the whole thing is coming from the person's work. So you can see that the first line, second line, third line, there is a consider more than 3 phrases that are 3 words that makes you a phrase. There's a phrase in each of them that is picked from the work, also following the same pattern. That's a problem. However, if he picks a phrase, gives a reference, and picks another person's work and adds it to it, that is why I was saying I read multiple words. Then goes again on the second line, picks another phrase from somewhere else, adds it to it. The chances that he has plagiarized are few. The percentage match can be high, but you may not see it that this is plagiarism because he has given a quote. Then it also depends on how much the argument, the content you are picking, this argument supports your argument. Sometimes you want to make a point. For example, a definition, and there's a way the person has written it, and it sounds very good. And you want to use the same thing. That one is not yours. Because it sounds very good, it also sounds good to me. So if you say it and you don't give the reference, or you pick it verbatim, and you don't put the reference there, even if you put the reference, you don't put quotes, you are plagiarized. And then there is a degree of plagiarism in terms of willful and then it being an error. Let's say that you pick a person's work, you quoted him very well, but on another page you use the person's work, but you didn't bring you forgot to put the reference there. That one may not necessarily be willful. But willful is when page 1, he didn't do it himself. He copied it, pasted it. Page 2, he copied another person's work, pasted it. We have had a student who was writing on e-voting in Ghana. And unfortunately for him, he picked somebody's dissertation from a university in Sweden. If it was an undergraduate dissertation, and then replicated the same thing for us. What I mean by unfortunately, the guy who is in Sweden, when you were doing the work, they told him to find another lecturer in Ghana to be able to work with, so that because the lecturers there don't know anything about Ghana. So the lecturer can see that whatever I write is consistent to the Ghanaian context. So I was the one who helped the person to do that. So by the time the guy bought it, I realized that this one man, I have done this work before. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So I pulled the other one, and quite a number of universities now put their dissertations online. It's a very common phenomenon. I shall say that's that. Quite a number of them do that. University of Manchester, so a lot of them. Swedish universities, almost all of them. Even there's some universities of Nigeria also do that. Now, it's not the abstract. The whole dissertation is online, but it's published with the university logo on it. Now, the idea is to show the university what is going on, the intellectual discourse that is going on. But I'm trying to point to you that if you pick it that way, you have plagiarized. You have stolen the work. It's not even plagiarized. It's beyond. This is stealing. Then there are other students who also like to go to other universities and pick the ones that are on the shelf. See, the only problem about the one that are on the shelf is you don't know whether the person has published it or not. Because somebody would have also gone to pick that same document and also put it on the internet somehow. So somewhere, one way or the other, if you want to plagiarize, you plagiarize yourself. Don't plagiarize something else. Even plagiarism, self-plagiarism is not advisable. Like your own work, and then you start copying and pasting the same work again. Even lecturers like to do that. His previous paper, he copies the same paper again. Like he's writing on e-banking in Ghana. First one, he wrote on e-banking in the case of EcoBank. Now he's writing on e-banking in the case of Cowbank. He copies the same literature review and takes to the Cowbank one. It's plagiarism. And then you can even be fined. In some way, they do worse. Some lecturers, when they are found to plagiarize, they take you to court, especially if the journal is very angry about it, because the reputation of the journal comes down. What happens is that they can put an injunction on your salary until the court case has cleared you and you plagiarize. Because it's not good. About presidents plagiarize even speeches, and then they say something. Not Obama, I didn't say Obama, but I think during the previous election debates, not this one that they are not going to have, there was this discussion that some parts of some, I think McCain's speech, he picked it from some old speech which was done by a previous Republican. They want originality.
Sorry, does plagiarism compare to you're first doing the literature review or doing the whole work?
It's in the whole work.
Because what I'm asking, if you have mentioned the word in your literature review, and let's say you are going back to that same thing, but you omitted it, but you have it in your literature review, is that still plagiarism?
What did you go and pick it from? Did you pick a whole sentence from a person's work and you didn't put it through? It's plagiarism.
No, but I'm saying you have it in your literature
Yes,
review.
Yes, but I'm asking, what do you pick? Anytime you are quoting somebody, whether I've already mentioned that you said it, anytime I quote, I have to give you the reference that it's not my words, it's yours. The idea, what we want to emphasize is anytime you pick somebody's work, which is not your work, let's declare that it's not your work, even though you have said it already. Because it's adding credit to your argument, and we're thinking that you are showing yourself. And one of the reasons why lecturers take this as a serious thing is when we are marking, we want to see the degree to which you are showing that you are analytical. So if you are just basing on somebody's analysis and you are not putting your own analysis there, we don't think that you wrote the dissertation. It could be easy that you are writing on, let's say, debt management. You pick 3 papers, you copy this guy's introduction, you put it down. I'm going to copy this one's methodology, put it down. And then you say you are finished. Where is your own work? There's no work in it. So from the beginning, every research that you put quotation mark to the end of the quotation mark, you didn't do any work. Scientific research requires you to do some amount of synthesis of literature, and it amounts of showing that you have picked the existing work, reviewed it and critiqued it, and then come out with new thoughts about what you are trying to look at, or the gaps that are pertaining to what you are trying to review, what you are trying to use for the research, or whatever we are doing the research. So please, I will encourage you that don't attempt to be smart. Don't attempt to be smart. Some students do that a lot. They wait. And sometimes you see, if the work is too good to be true, you don't. For example, first time you submit, you have not been meeting me. For 4 weeks, you don't come for your supervisor meeting. Then 3 weeks to submission, you bring everything complete. Everything done. It looks perfect. It's either you contracted somebody to do it for you, and you don't even know what is in it. I'll just give you, let me just say, and give a last scenario and then we'll move on. Last semester, EMBA, 2 students contracted the same person without knowing to write their dissertation. One person was writing on service market, the other guy was writing relationship market. The guy took the work, wherever there is relationship market, changes to service market. And the same supervisor. They submitted in the same week, late submission. Now he looked at it and he was asking himself, what should he do to them? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So if you want to contract somebody, make sure that you engage him exclusively. Then, the other thing that I wanted to point out when you began answering your question is the fact that they take their TAs to go through the lecturers usually just read the work to see the way it's not. The TAs sit down and then match the references every chapter and go to the references to see whether you find them there. That's when we start realizing that you have left some committed some references. I hope you understand me. You may have mentioned them, but you don't put it in your reference list. So they match it. They match it them. It's just a list. They'll just be copying and copying and copying. And after they produce it, they don't print their reference list and just be ticking. When they find it, they tick. When they find it, they tick. Then after that, they'll tell them 6 of the references are not in the list.
So what if you left out like 1 reference or 2?
There are some ones that the supervisor will call you to come back. But that is why the supervisor is the one who gives you the okay before you go and bind. But some supervisors, if they don't have a very good relationship with you, he doesn't even read the work. I hope you understand me. So you just say go ahead. And if you are not lucky and you have an external examiner who come and read and he sees it, you see, it goes against the supervisor and you at the same time. First of all, it tells the supervisor is not supervising you. Secondly, it also tells the student that you may end up being marked down. Because the supervisor marks first. So maybe I mark and I put you, for example, I mark somebody, I put him at 79. The external examiner came and put him at 75. Sorry, 69. And gave me 75. So when we describe the average, the guy got an A. In those times, 70 was an A. Now 70 is not an A.
How many times is it appropriate to quote the same source?
Good. That's a very good question. I would not like to quote the same source too much within a page.
Within a paper?
Within a page. I'm not even saying paper, page. If I'm using the same source in a page, just think about it. Every paragraph should have maybe a minimum of 3 references. Apart from the ones that maybe you want to put your argument across one sample. Now, those 3 references, I would not like to repeat them again. So 3 references should be distinct references. Now, in the next paragraph after the first paragraph, I won't repeat any of the 3 that I mentioned up there. But I can repeat it in the 3rd one. So I can maybe state the same reference twice on the page. But it all depends on the argument. You see, what we don't want to see, what we don't want is we look through the work and we realize that there's only one author's work you have read. And which some students do is excellent. He reads only one person's work. And then he picks that work, looks at his introduction, copies almost the same thing, but brings a few things. So the way the person presented his reference is the same thing. Internet in Ghana has become scarce. Then he writes, maybe Johnson 2005. Scarcity is happening to internet. You also write Johnson 2005. And the next one, the same. So if you think about it, the sentences are not being plagiarized. It's a reference that he's even plagiarizing, referencing. He has arranged them exactly like the other person. It looks like he didn't even read anybody. He just took this work and so how can I photocopy this without being caught? That's what he's doing. That is why I say that do the summary, summarize, like what I gave you. Summarize. All you do, when you summarize, you can then go back to it and use it. Now when you summarize and you just read the abstract, it doesn't even tell you much. But when you summarize and you have a skim through some of the introduction, the conclusion, and part of the work is better. Okay. Any final question, then we move on. Now, what we want to try to look into is to explain how to conduct or write out a research proposal. Now, one thing I will talk about here is to outline the steps. But the steps are outlined. Don't ever think that it is cast in stone. The supervisor is the one who awards the degree. If he goes and he says remove some section, add some section, listen to the supervisor. If he tells you why did you put it in, I don't tell you that because I said, but I gave a fair guideline. I gave a guideline which can be modified based on who is supervising you. Don't go and say that he says it should be this way and I won't listen to you. No. I don't award you the degree. Now, if you look into chapter 1, page 84, 85, I think there's a very good outline of how to write a research proposal out there in the book. Now, this is an idea of how your whole long essay is going to look like. The abstract, introduction, literature review, context of study, research methodology, the results. It's okay to break rapid, because when you're, especially with the finance students, you may be presenting a lot of financial data. So results can come as a separate chapter, and then discussion analysis as a separate chapter. It's welcome. So in that case, you have 7. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So don't be surprised that you have 7.
What's the context of the study?
The context of the study usually gives us a background to the area where you collect the data from, not the results. Why? Wow. I'm doing a research on the financial performance in telecom industry, but it's likely that external examiner doesn't even know anything about Ghana, because external examiners usually come external. Most of them come from beyond Ghana, so he doesn't really understand. So a year or 2 ago, some of the external examiners emphasized that we should have a context of study. Now, what it means is that we explain the telecom industry there, explain let us know the players in it, maybe the kind of financial flows that go through it. And then finally, if there's one firm that you are narrowing down, give us an overview of the firm. I'll bring a long essay here and I'll show you an example. So please, for example, if somebody's writing on the health sector, but who knows? Maybe the supervisor may not even have more information, financial management in the health sector. He doesn't even know how the health sector in Ghana is structured. So if you say there are government-owned hospitals and there are private hospitals, he doesn't even know. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. And sometimes the context gives a person more understanding to your work. Why the findings went out a particular way. A gentleman was doing something on green technology in Ghana, which was trying to explore how technologies can help use to promote green efficiency or green practices in the firm, reducing the impact of firms on the environment. Now, when you got to context of study, he had talked about EPA in Ghana, the policies concerning environmental protection in Ghana. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So you are doing something on inflation. I think you should give us an overview of some of what is inflation, like the Ghanaian view of what has gone on so far, and then even measures to address it. Or there are some policies that are or structural reforms that have come in, so that you don't spend here doing all those discussions. So that you just go straight into the data itself. If it is interviews with MDs, we present those interviews there. If it is some financial modeling you want to do, you do those modeling there. Good.
How different will the context of study be depending on the terms? Are you going to
No, good. The context of study, most of the references there will be practitioner-based literature or reports. However, some people have got their context of their write-up concerning the economy published as articles. Like Abo has written quite a considerable number of papers on corporate governance among SMEs in Ghana, and also in the banking sector and financial industry. So there are certain things and arguments that you may want to draw still from academic literature. It's welcome, but more about the Ghana view, not about the findings of the study, or even if it's about the findings of the study, but still about the context that you want to explain. For example, somebody wants to give an overview that there used to be 19 commercial banks, and now we move to 23, now 26 and 27. You need some papers to show, but if you're not getting anything in Bank of Ghana, and then somebody has written and published papers, you can use that to show that. So, as much as I will encourage you to use partition paper, if there is something in a good academic paper, do that. I remember when I was doing my PhD, the context of study I was trying to discuss about Ghana, I needed to explain the economy of Ghana in around 83. And I had to, and I was talking about structural adjustment program, ERP, that one too. And then the fact that the cocoa sales fell. And I realized that there was a paper called a journal called Political Economy. And somebody had discussed Ghana and done a discussion on it, looking at policies, economic policies in Ghana and how they have helped Ghana or not. Well, why should I go around, come and sit in Bank of Ghana, tell you go and come? This is the data there. Pick it and use your argument. I picked that person's own. Others, some other information from statistical service, and I was able to write my context of study. Then, when I got to the new reforms that President Kufuor brought, remember he did something on Presidential Initiative, PSI. I used information from Ghana Web. He did some launching, a lot of the cassava starch factory, and then other ones. So I had to put it in. Then there was also argument about corruption in the sale of telecom, some of the telecom companies around that same time, and then Westel's issue. So, but I was not getting any academic data for it, and then there was no industry report from NCA. So I came back to Ghana Web and Enjoy FM to show that the media had done that report there, and sometimes I had even to point out some of the things that some of the ministers did to show that sometimes political will is not there to implement policies. So I show and I'll quote and I'll block to show an extract from maybe Crusading Guide to show that political will was not there. But I would have done my argument already, but I was giving a context about Ghana, how far we have come. Because I was studying e-commerce in developing countries and I was trying to say how the economy has been influenced by reforms before technology came. So all the reforms came, then we did telecom reform too. So I had to do the tracing down. You don't need to do that, that's not, they're not getting paid. But sometimes, a topic that you've been working on, for example, I've seen a student who has been working on the impact of banking reforms on corporate governance in Ghanaian banks. And he wanted to start from the 80s, but he realized that he would get data all right in terms of secondary data, but he wanted to do some interviews. All the people he wanted to interview who could give him very good information can give him good information from are retired. Those who are still working can give information from 95, 92, 95 going. So he changed the era to what he can get. See, it's not his fault. But still, he used the secondary data to give us a context. I hope you are okay with that. Please, there was a hand here. Yeah.
I think the same question. So I was thinking that the context of study would have gone into introduction of the literature.
Good. I've seen some long essays that from the beginning, he will just talk about Ghana straight in the in chapter 1. He will have research background and go straight into Ghana. Sometimes I don't like that approach. It depends on your supervisor. Sometimes they also do a section about that. But you can't do a long discussion there. You can't discuss the policies, you can't discuss it. You can give us an overview. So you can do, remember this introduction is always like a snapshot of everything here. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So still, you are still welcome to give a snapshot in the background. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. But maybe, you see, you can't give us more than 2,000 words on that. It will be too much. The introduction will end up looking like a whole a different paper on its own. So you could give us an indication. I'll show you a paper by Abo that I want everybody to go and read, especially because of your course school program. I'll show you how he presented his research problem in the introduction. Then he had a section called research problem. Because in the introduction he presented it in a snapshot. Then he had a whole section which you could have called literature review, but he called it research problem, and he discussed the research and discussed Ghana, which I think is a very good lesson and a good way to learn how to write, especially in your field. But remember, the supervisors have got what they like. So when you do your first one, it tells you change this, change that. Always welcome it and then listen. Now let's go through this one. Now this is a fair idea of how a research proposal may look like. This is a generic one that is used across many universities. But I'll show you the style changes. Introduction, research objectives, research questions, significance, literature review, methodology, project schedule, and references. Literature review just gives you a detailed write-up of the area. This is why some people call their research problem. It depends on you. Others too don't have this one. They rather do a lot of good discussion here, so that you can just go straight out. But I think it's up to you too. Some people call it preliminary review of literature. But let me show you another outline. See this here, I've left the literature review because I think that you do very good discussion here. But you can still have it there if you think you want to expand on it. Some supervisor will tell you, go and put in a section called literature review and review what is being currently done there. But that is what I've been teaching you that you do here. For example, look at this one. I'm teaching you how to turn this one into chapter 1. They have got similarities. That introduction that you see there, if you do it very well, it should cover the research background, the research problem, and the research purpose. So that it's very easy for you to move straight to the objectives when you finish. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Then from the objectives, you move to the questions, and you move to the significance of the research methodology, the limitations, project schedule, and then chapter outline, how your chapters will outline, how many chapters you are writing, what each chapter will do. But somehow, some people will do this one and write this one just as the background, and then come and do a very detailed discussion here. The styles are different. Sometimes some people use here this one to produce a research framework. But I don't know much about you. At this stage, it will be too ambitious for us. We're expecting that you know your research framework and everything already. Some of the things he needs to help you. So I want to say that is for the first try, you can submit this one to your supervisor, then let him come back and give you feedback. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Because that is what you are getting your feedback. But if you become so much, if you cover everything you have done, you have selected all the things that you want to do, when the supervisor is changing it, you get worried because you think you have done too much reading to go back and start another reading again. So let's look through what all these things entail. Research background. Research background provides an introduction to the research issue. It may examine the current discourse and trends of views concerning social phenomena and in order to pose the research question. But the research background does not state the research question. It just sets up. It implies it. But it doesn't state it out. What will state it out will be your problem that will come and emphasize it. Let me show you an example. I'm using a general example, but there are some financial examples I'll show you later. Aggressive behavior in nursing homes. Somebody's writing on this. Nursing homes play a key role in society, supporting the elderly and the families of the elderly. Now this is an argument. Somebody wants to show an illustration. A report from WHO says that about 75% of families in the US, in Canada, and UK have family members or close relations in nursing homes. A number of developing countries now, he has used the global view or the US view, now he's come to developing countries. A number of developing countries are also increasingly introducing nursing homes. For example, as of 2008, the number of nursing homes in South Africa and Nigeria have increased by 60%, with each of the countries having not less than 2,400 registered nursing homes. Families who adopt or use nursing homes tend to agree to benefits including quality of health care, quality of social support, and improved familial relations, as the elderly are no longer viewed as a burden. Now he's finished. Despite these benefits, he's now going to show you a deviation. Recent reports have questioned how nursing homes are managed and regulated, especially as residents may have different health and emotional needs. If the benefits of nursing homes are to be sustained, there is a need to review the needs of our behavioral residents and how they can be addressed. Very simple introduction. He's not stated a question, but he's pointed out there is a need. And he's used a lot of practitioner relationship to show that. And what it's trying to emphasize here is the business problem, the issue that is in society. Then think about it. He now has to move to the research problem. A situation in need of solution or improvement, the research gap, or an alteration, or a discrepancy between the way things are done or the way things ought to be. Now, this is another example here. He's now finished the research background. He's now moving to the problem. Now, see how he presents the problem. Aggressive behavior. Now, he's picking an area within the whole nursing home issue. Aggressive behavior in cognitively impaired elderly is often problematic for family and professional caregivers who attempt to provide compassionate for their needs. If caregivers view aggression as meaningful behavior to be explored and understood, rather than as disruptive behavior to be controlled, they may find it more of a challenge and less of a threat. In the future, behavioral problems in cognitively impaired are likely to have an even greater impact on individuals, families, and society, since the prevalence of dementia is known to increase with age. And the number of the old in the country is projected to increase, is projected to continue to rise sharply. Both family and professional caregivers will need to understand dementia and develop skills in prevention and management of behavioral problems in this population. This research seeks to respond to this need. He's pointed out the need and he's telling that he knows what to do. Think about this one. This is Abbott's paper I was telling that you have to find. So you can go to Emerald and look for this paper. Now, one thing that you realize is that he points it out. This was in the introduction. Corporate governance has been identified in previous studies to influence firms' financing or capital structure decisions, which also affect performance. One thing I just want to emphasize here is that anytime anybody is presenting a research program, there's always the word that is like previous research, existing research. There's always a reference to what has been done, complement what is valuable about what has been done before he points out the gap. So these empirical studies tended to focus on mainly on developed economies with inconclusive results. Very little. Remember what I taught you last week? Little. Only recently. Very little. Meaning that there is a gap coming. Very little, however, has been done on corporate governance in sub-Saharan Africa, especially with respect to firms' financing decisions. In Ghana, for instance, you see, argument that he narrows down. I've been telling you all the time that you start with a global view, come to Africa or come to development, and narrow down again. He's doing the same thing even in research problem, not even in background, even in research problem. In Ghana, for instance, economic development and restructuring have introduced modern forms of business activity and diverse financing structures like Ghana Stock Exchange in the past 2 decades. Thus, firms are being exposed to more financing options than previously. Now, he could have put here a reference to show that it's true that stock exchange, but some of the arguments, if it is there and straightforward, it does not necessarily mean. And he's also an authority. You are not an authority.
Yes, I think because I wanted to comment, but I now you have said that because when you put inconclusive results.
No, inconclusive result means that the research is contradictory. I pointed it out last week that sometimes you read this word and saying that X is equal to Y. Another word is saying the same, a similar issue, Y is equal to X. So there's inconclusive results. And he's looking at these works. Nobody has given.
So that statement is not suspect.
No, it's not suspect because these, what is these? C, remember I said C, this. So these. Normally.
So how will a research, under the Constitution, how will such a research conclude? What would the research have?
No, the inconclusive results is not you. It is.
No, that's what the work you are reading. I'm saying, how would you identify a word that you can see that the researcher has misstated that not come to it?
No, the researcher really says that. It is that the fact that this word gave one view and this other word gave another view. So you look at That's where the synthesis and then the review comes. If you don't review, you don't see. Remember I told you that it's always good to look at different authors who have researched on the same issue. So that you can see this guy's findings and compare it to another person's findings. Ask yourself, are they comparable?
I understand.
So it's inconclusive. Yes. We have not finished, but I like the way the questions are coming. Let me put this
I
one.
wanted to find out why the 1988 doesn't come first.
It doesn't necessarily matter. To me, it doesn't necessarily matter.
Does it use the AP or the, but in terms of the underlining of
Oh no, it is link, hyperlink. Sorry, hyperlink. This is plagiarizing style. I copied and pasted it in PowerPoint, so hyperlink. Sorry about that. Yeah, but that's a very good observation. Anyway, let's continue. Are we okay? Now, as firms are being exposed to more financing options than previously, it is crucial to determine how current issues in corporate or governance affect the financing decisions of Ghanaian firms. This paper specifically examines the relationship between various variables of corporate governance and capital structure decisions of firms listed in GSC, that's the Ghana Stock Exchange, during the 6-year period. I like this statement. This is a very good research purpose. It tells you what he's looking into, the factors he's looking into, and then where and how far he's going. So it's very, very complete. I'm teaching you research purpose on that. Very, very complete. So you don't, there's no ambiguity about it. Sometimes some people write objectives or purpose and it looks like this. You are not very sure what he's looking into. So please read this paper. Read this paper. I don't want to say that you should summarize it, but read this paper and then summarize it for yourself. But read the paper. If I say summarize it, you read. So read the paper and like this. Learn the style, learn the presentation. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. But please, it is good to download more of the papers by lecturers who are going to who are teaching you the financial or development financial courses, so that you can see how to approach the. Because you are the people who are going to supervise you. And I already talked to Professor Dr. Bob King. He says that you can come and see him and discuss some of your ideas. He is open to discussion as of now. I hope you know Dr. Bob King.
Yes.
You go for lectures.
Yes.
Financial evaluation.
We only it's an elective.
It's an elective. And then you didn't elect it yourself now. Go back and elect it. Okay, now let's look at a different example. This guy is talking about student diversity in liberal arts college. Who, see, this is what I was saying about the Chinese name. Who and who. Now, if you don't take care, you don't know whether this is a surname who. When you are looking at it, what it might be Lee who. Then if you don't know whether Lee is a surname or who is a surname. So sometimes it can confuse you. Lee and Co. 2003 found that students in private institutions more frequently interacted with students from different backgrounds, and that students at large doctoral extensive universities and liberal arts colleges had more experiences with diversity than their counterparts in other institutions. It is not surprising that students at large universities will have more exposure to diversity, given that these institutions typically enroll more students from different racial, ethnic, and cultural groups. Somewhat unexpected is that students at smaller liberal arts colleges would report equally frequent experiences with diversity. Historically, smaller liberal arts colleges have claimed to have distinctive missions, especially when compared with large universities. So you see the references have come there. But they also tend to be located in rural and less racial diverse locations. Even so, it appears that a distinctive dimension of contemporary liberal arts college is the ability. It appears that a distinctive dimension of contemporary liberal arts college is the ability to expose students to diversity in educationally purposeful ways. How they do this is not clear. The whole thing he has discussed, this is what he has wanted to emphasize. How they do what he pointed out is not clear. I'm just showing different ways people write. So don't think that the other one you saw is the only way you write. See, you can even end it up with a question. That sets up your research issue, your research problem. Now this is another one, racial diversity or complex thinking equality. Previous research, I like this statement. Everybody tries to point out that he's looking into previous research. Nobody tries to write from the head. So if you start writing research problem without a previous research, I've seen students who can come and bring a research problem, there's no reference. And I tell them that is a business problem, that's not a research problem. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Good. And even the reference, it has to be research type of reference, not just statistics. Now, previous research has found that racially diverse educational environments are associated with positive intellectual and social outcomes for colleges. Racial diversity in the student body is linked to the likelihood that a student will interact with someone of a different race or engage in discussions of racial or ethnic issues. Frequent interaction across racial lines and discussion of racial and ethnic issues positively predicts student retention, intellectual and social self-concept, and overall satisfaction with college. The existing evidence, do you realize it? The existing evidence, what is he trying to point out? Previous research. So the style is out to you. The existing evidence, however, is largely based on, so you tell us what has been done so far, and then you point it out. Has largely been based on quasi-experimental or correlational designs using self-reported data. No study today, this is a method gap. Remember, he's criticizing the current methods of doing that research. No study has randomly assigned students to conditions, that's experimental type, of racial diversity and directly examine cognitive outcomes. You even put the page number there. I think the page number for which of them will show you one of these ones.
So can you use that we have present research has found, can you use this found? Present research has
it's good, but what problem about proof in this scenario is the fact that you are talking about causality. You have proved me that it exists. There was something there that had been proven. I will try to stay away from words like that, in my opinion. It's not wrong. But I rather has found. Because when you can find but you cannot prove. Finding is different from proving. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. You want to stay away from that. Now, this is another example you can read later. But all I just want to point out that there are many different approaches that we can use for the work. Now, the difference between the research purpose and the research background is the fact that the purpose now tells you what you are going to do. So based on what we said concerning the nursing, the purpose of this study is to determine the nature, frequency of occurrence, and the context of aggressive behavior in the nursing home sample of cognitively impaired residents. Now he's told you what factors he's looking into and then where. Just like Abbott said he was going to do his own. Where he's going to collect the data from. Good. So the research problem typically tells us a general overview of the problem, with just enough information about the scope and the purpose of the study to provide initial understanding of the research. The research objective provides a more specific statement and question that communicates in greater detail the nature of the study. So if we are moving from the purpose to the objective, it's quite different, a little bit different, but it's still based on the purpose. Our purpose here is to determine the nature, the frequency, and the context of aggressive behavior. So look at the objectives I have. Two objectives. One, to investigate the proportion context, the proportion of cognitively impaired nursing home residents that demonstrate aggressive behavior. Two, to investigate the types of aggressive behavior that occur most frequently among cognitively impaired residents. Now this one is answering the other two, frequency and then nature, and this one is answering the context. So one thing that you end up realizing is your objective should be able to address the purpose. We should be able to see that there's an attempt to address the purpose. I'm not saying that you should state the same purpose there again, but you should be able to address the purpose. so that your questions can also emerge from it. Now, this is another example. The purpose of this study is to investigate the attitudes of high school students to mandated drug testing programs. In the objectives, he brings in the factor he wants to look into. He could have stated it here by saying that the purpose is to investigate the gender differences, but he didn't say it there. He brought it here. Here he says that the study examines the differences between males and female attitudes. It's up to you. I can make it more detailed and then still emphasize it here, or I will make it more detailed than this one. But when you are moving from the research objective to question, you are rather interrogating the statement or the research objective. You are turning it into a question. And I always advise that please don't be getting too much objective. Don't maximum. Our advice in my advice. I don't know what this professor will say. Is 3. In fact, preferably 2. The reason why I'm saying that is you do too much work because you need to show that you have answered or addressed all those objectives by the time you finish. But if you think about it carefully, sometimes an objective can be 2 in 1. For example, this objective is looking at 1, what are the types of aggressive behavior that exist, and 2, which of those types are most frequent. But he has put them into 1. Hence, he has 2 questions. What is the proportion of cognitively impaired? Now, you see, you are just changing this one to a question. And here too, he has done the same thing. Which types of aggressive behavior occur most frequently? I could have had 3 questions, in which the first one would be, what are the types of aggressive behavior in the nursing home? Then 2, which types occur frequently or most frequently? Any question? But the problem we all have is we don't know how to write research questions. What you have right now is not a good research question. You think it's a research question. When you start understanding that research questions have some attributes. First of all, it has to be clear. It has to be focused and it has to be complex. That is the ambiguity about it. If it is too simple and Google can answer it, then you don't do the research. Some research topics, questions are too simple. When you type it in Google, Google will give you the answer. So you don't even do the research. Anyway, let's look at it. What does it mean by you need clarity? This is somebody's research question. Why are social networking websites harmful? Now, the unclear version of the question does not specify which social networking website or suggest which kind of harm it is. It assumes that harm is proven. It's assumed that harm is proven or accepted. The clearer version, which is this one, says that it tells you which site is looking into and which factors, remember, which factors is going to narrow down on. So let's think about it. How are online users experiencing or addressing privacy issues on such social networking websites as MySpace and then Facebook? It's more focused, it's more specific, and you know that you are looking into a particular type of harm. Because there are so many types of harm online, cyberbullying, cybercrime, there's a lot of them. Then it has to be focused. What is the effect of the environment from global warming? That question you may need 2 textbooks to answer it because there are so many views, even in the practitioner world, before we look at the scientific evidence for it. So he said the unfocused question is broad, that the book, it cannot be adequately answered in the book. The focused question narrows down to a specific cause, a specific place, and a specific group. So please, don't just be dropping questions just as if you don't know what you are doing. Let them be focused, let them be have clarity. Then simplicity. How are doctors addressing diabetes in the USA? It is too much of a simple question. The simple question can be looked up online and they can get factual answers for it. The WHO can tell you the answer. So you don't need to do any research. So it doesn't leave room for analysis. The reason why we want a complex question is that you have to have some degree of analysis in the work. So the more complex version is written in 2 parts. It is thought-provoking and requires no significant investigation and evaluation. As a general rule of thumb, the Google search can give you the answer. It is not likely and very effective. So the same thing here, purpose and questions. Purpose and questions. Now I would like to end here so that next we could continue the rest of the proposed methodology and the rest of the. What I want you to start thinking about, which by the time I'll write it up for you, but I'll be working on an exercise, but you can start. I want you to come up with a small write-up of about 300 words for your research background, another 300 words or 250 words on the research problem, and come up with objectives and questions. We'll do it. It's not submitting now. You submit it somewhere at the first week of October. But as I teach it, when the time we finish, I would have helped you walk through writing a very small research proposal. So start thinking about it, your topic area. Now we have learned up to here, so we'll be adding on to it as we go on. So try to read around and come up with a background. You can look at a sample here and write, and don't be ambitious. This is about 300 words or 250 words. Later on, when you read more and more, you can come and build on it. That's what students don't realize, that it's not about sitting down and bringing 700 words on the sheet. The ability to get the skeleton there, get a review there, then every time you read, come and add. You may even realize that this is not relevant, I can put this on, this is more of a better argument. Now you have seen different types of arguments that are there. If you're writing on capital structure, let me just teach you a trick. If you are writing on corporate governance or capital structure, go and do Google on it. Find some papers abroad, find some papers in Africa, find some papers in Ghana. Now write your first sentence. Without even reading, you can write, research has studied corporate governance from this and that by looking at their titles and their abstracts. You can write the first one. Now look out for the gaps in them and use it to write your second sentence. And then look for the Ghana paper and also write the weakness about the Ghana one and come up with what you want to do. Now finish. It's a strategy. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. You have a topic here. Stop being ambitious. Just choose something that is manageable for you. Like financial, maybe internet financial reporting or financial evaluation of SMEs or financial practices among small industries. So find some literature on it. Look at it from the developed world. Get something on Africa. Maybe Africa, there are some good countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa. Those countries are very good. So you can even type financial management in South Africa, something like that. So you can get a component. Strategically, you can just drop and put it down and write your 300. Later on, as you are reading more and more and more, you get good ones to come and build upon it. But be very strategic and write this one. You are gone. Yes. No, I'm trying to say, like, this is about 300 words for one section, another 300 words for the whole proposal in 300 words. Then you are writing bigger points for me. No, I'll give you an outline for it. Don't worry, I'm just telling you now. But what I'm saying that you need to think about it. This is about 250 words. So you need about 250 words for background, another 250 or 300 words for research proposal. Then the purpose and this are just statements. That's about, this is about 70 or 50 words, if I'm right. So this is about 50 words. That will be another section. Then you come to your objective, which is very easy. When you do the first two, you have finished the work. The next thing is just statements. Do you realize it? The key thing is the background and then the objective, the research problem. When you have finished and narrowed down, at least you are okay. Now you know where you are. And those are the things that are more difficult. But I'm teaching you how to do it very easily. Don't be too ambitious. Writing 800 words for background. Just do 300 words. Look at it, how the background is written. So that's it. Look at the view in the developed country. Look at it in the developing country. Come look at what I have discussed. Point out the need. And go to research problem. Review literature. Point out the need. Okay. I tell my students that break it into different smaller similar sentences. You need a sentence about that will open the thing. Then you need a sentence that will illustrate some of the empirical studies. Then you need a sentence that will critique the empirical studies. Then you need a sentence that will point out what you want to do. So technically, you need about 4 key sentences. I'm not saying Kofi is coming. 4 key sentences, which each of them is about. If you are writing 200 words, divided by each of them is about 20 words. Yeah. So maybe say 5 keys, so it gives you about 250. 5 keys, each of them being about 25 divided by 250 divided by 5 gives us 50. So maybe 2 sentences for each of what I said, each of the blocks I said. Then string them together. Will be okay. Okay. Any questions, clarity, anything that you are confused about?
Samsung Galaxy S3. Designed for humans.